Leo Mathis, veteran, forgotten by a nation he once served, was mocked, manhandled, and dragged away for doing nothing but ordering coffee. But Leo wasn't just another homeless man. He was a soldier with a past, and a name that still echoed through the halls of the Pentagon. When a young waitress dared to believe him and made the everything changed. Now, a hidden network awakens. Truth rises. Badges fall. And the town that once looked away will have no choice but to face what it became. From silence to reckoning, from shame to justice. Cops harassed the wrong veteran. I walked into the Blue Lantern just looking for a hot meal, that's all, but the moment I stepped inside, the room fell quiet. People stared. Others didn't bother hiding their disgust. I sat at the counter, nodding politely to the waitress. She smiled back nervously. From the corner, 2 officers chuckled loud enough for everyone to hear. "Didn't know we were serving charity cases now," one said. "Bet he found that jacket in a dumpster," the other added. "Probably faked his military service too." I kept my eyes on the coffee in front of me, didn't flinch, didn't speak. But inside, it burned. Not from Shamino, from knowing this country honors your sacrifice with suspicion the moment you look like you've fallen behind. I didn't say a word. That's the thing about people like Mew, learn early that silence can be armor. I kept my posture steady, eyes forward, hands calm. But inside my coat, my thumb slid a small voice recorder from my pocket and pressed record. I didn't carry it because I wanted to cause trouble. I carried it because I'd seen enough to know trouble didn't wait for permission. It showed up loud and smug, wearing a badge and a smirk. Across the counter, the young waitress Clara, her name tag said, was pretending nothing was happening. But I saw her pause, just a flicker. The way her hands trembled slightly as she set my plate down. The way she glanced at the officers, then back at me. She heard every word, and unlike the rest, she didn't look away. "Meatloaf and coffee," she said softly, setting the plate in front of me. Her voice held steady, but her eyes told a different story, one I'd read in combat zones and emergency rooms. Fear, yes. But also something rarer, courage waking up. As I took my first bite, the officers kept talking, louder now, about bums, freeloaders, and fakes who claimed to be soldiers. I didn't rise to it. I'd faced worse than words in the jungle, in hospitals, in courtrooms. But when one of them flicked a sugar packet onto my plate and said, "Dance for your dinner," something shifted. I placed the packet back on their table, slow and steady. "I earned my dignity in Da Nang," I said, "and I won't beg for it here." Silence fell again, but this time, Clara didn't look away. She reached into her apron and quietly tapped her phone screen recording. She didn't need to say anything. She'd already picked a side. "You need to leave," the bigger cop said, stepping toward me like a man used to getting his way. I didn't look up, just took another slow sip of coffee. "I've paid for this meal, I intend to finish it." "That's not how it works," the second one snapped. "You're disturbing the peace. That's a lawful order." Lawful? I'd heard that word before, in jungles and courtrooms and hospital rooms where orders meant life or death. These two didn't know the first thing about law. They knew power. Or thought they did. When I didn't move, the big one's nameplate said Rogers. Grabbed my arm, hard. That's when I spoke. "Call Command Sergeant Major Terrence Hall," I said, voice low but sharp enough to cut through the diner's silence. "Tell him Leo Mathis is in trouble." He froze for a second. Not because he knew the name, but because I didn't say it like someone bluffing. I said it like a man with nothing left to prove. "The smaller one," Beckett snorted. "Who the hell is that? The mayor of the alley you sleep in?" I didn't answer. Just looked at Clara, who stood behind the counter with wide, uncertain eyes. "Repeat it," I told her gently. "Command Sergeant Major Terrence Hall, Pentagon. Tell him Leo Mathis is in trouble." Clara blinked. Her phone was still in her hand from recording. She didn't say yes, didn't need to. Her grip tightened slightly, and I saw the gears turning. She was thinking it through. Then Rogers yanked me from the stool. The room gasped, chairs scraped. Someone whispered, "Jesus." As my feet dragged against the floor, I didn't resist, Resistance would have given them what they wanted. Instead, I kept my spine straight and my silence sharper than any words. "You threatening a federal officer now," Beckett barked. "No," I said calmly, even as Rogers twisted my arm. "I'm reminding you some men carry weight you can't measure by clothes or coins." As we reached the door, my dog tags slipped free from beneath my collar, Beckett noticed. "Nice try," he muttered, snatching them and tossing them to the floor. "You can buy those online. Real soldiers don't end up like you." Rogers shoved me through the door into the cold. They slammed me against their cruiser, rough and unnecessary. My ribs flared with pain, but I didn't flinch, just locked eyes with Clara, still watching from the doorway. Her breath hung in the air, so did her decision. They cuffed me and shoved me into the back seat. As the car pulled away, I caught a glimpse of her kneeling in the snow, picking up my tags. She read the name. Her mouth moved without sound. Leo Mathis. She'd remember it. The cruiser disappeared down Main Street, its lights off. In the back seat, I let my head rest against the cold glass. I didn't fear the cell waiting for me. I feared the world that had forgotten the weight of a uniform, the meaning of sacrifice. But maybe not Clara. Maybe she would make the call. Maybe she would believe a tired old man who once carried others out of hell. And maybe, just maybe, these two officers had picked the wrong man to push. Clara sat in the employee bathroom, door locked, hands shaking. The tile was cold beneath her sneakers, the air thick with silence. Her phone screen lit her face as she stared at the number Leo had made her memorize. Command Sergeant Major Terrence Hall, Pentagon. It sounded ridiculous, like something out of a movie. She whispered aloud, as if saying it would make it less absurd. "Call the Pentagon, because a homeless man told me to?" But that man's voice, it hadn't shaken once, not when they mocked him, not when they dragged him out, and those dog tags she had cradled them like something sacred. Leo Mathis. The name was engraved deep, like it had been worn over decades. Clara swallowed hard and pressed the green call button. The line rang once, twice, then. "Department of Defense. This is Sergeant Kincaid. How may I direct your call?" Clara nearly dropped the phone. Hi. I need to speak with Command Sergeant Major Hall. It's about Leo Mathis." A pause. "Who is this?" "My name is Clara James. To work at a diner in Greystone. 2 officers just arrested Mr. Mathis. He said to call. He said Hall would know." Another pause, longer this time. "Hold the line." The hold music was sterile, robotic. Clara counted the seconds, her heart pounding in her throat. Then click. "This is Command Sergeant Major Hall." A deep, grounded voice filled her ear, calm, controlled, dead serious. "You said Leo Mathis is in trouble. Tell me everything." Clara did. From the moment Leo walked in, to the cruel jokes, to the moment he was forced into the cruiser. She mentioned the dog tags, the sugar packet, his voice, the way he never once raised it. Hall didn't interrupt, but she could hear it, a shift in his breathing, like he recognized every detail she shared. When she finished, there was a beat of silence, then. "You did the right thing, Clara. I want you to listen carefully. I'm initiating a Tier 2 intervention. You will receive a secure text in 2 minutes. Send any video footage you have there, then go home. Do not speak of this call. Do not return to the diner. Is that clear?" Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, sir. Leo Mathis saved my life in Fallujah. I owe him mine. Now it's time to return the favor." The call ended. Her phone vibrated a moment later, number masked, encryption active. She uploaded the footage, hands still trembling. What she didn't know was that Hall had already picked up another line, barking orders before the video even finished transmitting. Across the country, a storm had begun. At Fort Bragg, a retired colonel's eyes widened at the name on the file. At the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, a red flag appeared on a dormant case file marked Veteran Discrimination, Inactive. And in a dark office in D.C., a 4-star general stood up mid-briefing, grabbed his coat, and said, "We've got a situation." In the Greystone Police Department, Leo sat on a cold metal bench in holding. The walls were stained, and the clock above the desk hadn't moved in years. But Leo wasn't focused on the walls. He was focused on breathing. Inhale, exhale, count 4, count 4. He'd learned this during his second deployment. When bombs fell so close you forgot your own name. It was how you survived the waiting. Then footsteps. The door clanged open. 2 people stepped in, not cops, not local. A woman in a sleek black suit, a man in a crisp uniform, both with federal badges. "Mr. Mathis," the woman said respectfully, "you're free to go." Leo blinked once. That was fast. The man nodded. "Command Sergeant Major Hall sends his regards." For the first time all day, Leo allowed a small smile. In the diner's back room, Clara sat in the dark, watching her phone. And when the message came in, "He's safe." Her tears fell freely. She'd made the call. And the world had moved. I'd been sitting in that holding cell for nearly an hour. The bench was cold, the overhead light flickered like it couldn't decide if it wanted to die or stay awake. The smell of bleach lingered in the air, none of it was unfamiliar. Military barracks weren't much different, just with more honor and fewer cuffs. But I wasn't afraid. I was disappointed. This country, the one I'd bled for, looked at me like I was a threat in rags, and the men sworn to protect it, they were the ones dragging its dignity through the dirt. Then came the footsteps. Sharp, purposeful, too smooth to be local cops. The door clanged open. 2 people stepped inside, 1 man, 1 woman, dark suits, federal badges, not a wrinkle out of place. "Mr. Leo Mathis?" the woman asked, voice clear and professional. I looked up slowly. "Still remember my name, that's a good start." "You're being released immediately," she said, "on direct order from Command Sergeant Major Terrence Hall." I stood. My knees ached, ribs still sore from being slammed into the cruiser, but I straightened my back like I was still in uniform. That's one thing they couldn't strip from Memi bearing. "All charges are dropped," the man added, "and the officers involved are now under internal investigation for civil rights violations against a decorated veteran." I didn't smile, but I nodded. They walked me through the hallway, past desks and lockers, and wide eyes pretending not to stare. Rogers was at the front desk, arguing with the sheriff, his voice loud, his face red. Beckett stood nearby, arms folded tight, trying to disappear into the wall. Then they saw me. Me, walking free, flanked by 2 federal agents. The female agent stopped and turned. She held up a folded document. "Officers Rogers and Beckett," she said loudly, so everyone could hear, "you are under investigation for the unlawful detainment and use of force against a decorated war veteran. Effective immediately, you are relieved of duty, badge and firearm now." The entire room froze. A young patrolman near the door went pale. Beckett pulled his badge slowly from his chest. Rogers tore his off and slammed it onto the counter. I stepped forward, just enough to look them both in the eye. "You asked if I was really a soldier," I said to Rogers, my voice calm. "The answer is yes, and today, this country just proved it still remembers who we are." I didn't wait for a response. They didn't have one worth hearing. Outside, the cold air hit my face, but for the first time in days, it didn't cut. The agents offered me a ride. I declined. I'd rather walk. They nodded. No pity, just respect. As I reached the bottom of the steps, I heard a voice behind me. "Leo." I turned. Clara was hurrying down the sidewalk, wrapped in a too thin coat, holding something close to her chest. "You're okay," she breathed, stopping in front of me, eyes glassy from relief and fear and something else. Without a word, she opened her hand. My dog tags, cleaned, warm from her touch. "I didn't know if they mattered," she whispered, "but I kept them safe." I looked down at them, then at her. A young woman with no badge, no power, no training, but she'd stood taller than anyone else in that room. "They matter," I said quietly, "and so do people who remember what they mean." I took the tags, slid them back over my head, and tucked them under my collar. This battle wasn't over. But it had just begun to turn. By morning, my name was circulating through places I hadn't heard from in decades: command offices, veterans networks, and quietly guarded channels not meant for public ears. I didn't need a TV to know something had shifted. The phone in my pocket buzzed with numbers I hadn't dialed since 1975. It was happening. They were waking up. But it was the call from Hall that brought it full circle. "Leo," he said, voice steady and worn with memory, "it's good to hear you're still out there." "You never said goodbye properly," I replied with a faint smile. "Thought I'd give you the chance." He chuckled. "You always did have a twisted sense of timing." There was a pause on the line, filled with years neither of us needed to say aloud. "You remember Saigon?" he finally asked. "Every inch," I said, "especially the alley behind that collapsed pharmacy." "That was the day I thought I'd bleed out in a gutter," Hall said. "And you weren't supposed to go back for me." "No man left behind," I replied. "We said it. I meant it." His voice cracked slightly. "You carried me on your back for 5 blocks, through fire and God knows what else." "And you've carried my name ever since," I said softly. "Guess it finally came full circle." What most people don't know is that I've never stopped serving. I just changed the battlefield. After I came home, after the welcome parades dried up and the politicians turned their eyes elsewhere, I saw what happened to us. The forgotten, the broken, the ones too proud to beg and too tired to fight anymore. So I did what I could. Quietly. I helped set up the Chain, an informal but fiercely loyal underground network of veterans across the country. We found beds for the cold, jobs for the jobless, medicine for the sick, no paperwork. No headlines, just action. Just us, helping each other like we always did. I used my pension, what little savings I had, and a whole lot of favors I never thought I'd call in. I became the man you don't notice at the bus station, but who knows how to get a vet to safety in 2 hours. The man who looks like a vagrant but holds the names of 50 retired colonels in his back pocket. I wasn't homeless. I was embedded. When Clara found me sitting at the shelter that evening, she brought hot soup and a new pair of socks. She didn't ask questions, but I could tell she knew something had changed. "They're saying your name on the radio," she said, setting the tray down gently. "Even the mayor's office released a statement." I raised an eyebrow. "Did it include an apology?" She smiled. "Not yet, but I wouldn't be surprised." She paused, then added, "People are asking who you really are." I stirred the soup slowly. "Someone who kept a promise." "To whom?" "To every man and woman who came back and had to fight a second war in their own soil, in silence." She sat beside me. "And now?" "Now I let the world see what happens when they push the wrong soldier too far." The next day, I walked into a quiet conference room at the local VFW hall. Waiting there were 5 other veterans, some in wheelchairs, some with missing limbs, all with the same fire behind their eyes. They were part of the Chain. Terrence had called them in. When I stepped inside, they all stood very one of them. "Leo Mathis," one said, voice thick with emotion. "We thought you were gone." "Not gone," I replied, "just working undercover." They laughed. And then they saluted me not because of my rank, but because of what we'd built. You see, sometimes dignity wears rags, sometimes leadership sleeps on benches. But today, the uniform came off. And the armor underneath was stronger than ever. The video went live at 8:00 a.m. sharp. No dramatic music, no edits. Just raw footage, Clara's phone capturing every second. The insults, the threats, the sugar packet flicked like a bone to a stray dog. Leo's quiet defiance. His words about Kandahar, and then, the moment they dragged him from the diner, dog tags falling, pride left untouched. By 10:00 a.m., the views had crossed 100,000. By noon, it was a national headline. Decorated veteran dragged from diner by police for trying to eat dinner. Justice for Leo trending across the country. Pentagon confirms Leo Mathis as former Staff Sergeant, Bronze Star recipient. And then the floodgates opened. Clara's inbox filled with interviews. Veterans groups from California to New York issued statements of support. Civil rights organizations offered legal counsel pro bono. Community members who'd once looked away now lined up to speak out. Even the mayor's office couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. By 3:00 p.m., the Greystone Police Department was surrounded by reporters. And by 5:00, the police chief, Richard Holcomb, stepped down. His statement was short and trembling. Mistakes were made. I accept full responsibility. But for the people who had watched that video shaking with rage, hearts cracked wide open, mistakes wasn't strong enough. This wasn't an accident. This was a pattern. And now, it was unraveling. That same evening, I stood at the steps of the courthouse, flanked by Clara and Hall. No speech, no podium. Just the sight of a black man in a clean coat, standing tall beside two people who had chosen dignity over silence. The press shouted questions. I said only one thing. The uniform never leaves you, and neither does the oath. Then we walked inside. Inside the courtroom, charges were formally announced. Officer Derek Rogers and Officer Paul Beckett were indicted on 3 counts. Unlawful detainment. Excessive use of force. Violation of civil rights under Title 18, Section 242. The judge, a Korean War veteran himself, read the charges with a clenched jaw. Neither officer spoke. Neither made eye contact. Their lawyers requested bail. It was denied. The room erupted in whispers, but I stayed still, watching. Not for revenge. For something heavier. Justice. Afterward, Clara and I returned to the dinner not for food, but for memory. The place had changed, new management, new paint, but the same stool still sat at the counter, second from the end. Clara stood back as I placed something on it. My old dog tags. Not as a relic. As a reminder. That even in the darkest rooms, someone can press record. Someone can make a call. Someone can turn silence into movement. That night, a letter arrived. From a Marine vet in Texas. I saw the video. For years, I thought nobody would care if I spoke up. Now I know they will. Thank you, brother. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us. About every name on a plaque, every medal buried in a box, every veteran left behind not on the battlefield but in the streets, shelters, and shadows of the country they served. They called it a reckoning. But really, it was a reminder. That justice delayed isn't always justice denied. Sometimes, it just waits. For the wrong man to be pushed. And the right one to stand. 1 year later, the winter returned, but it felt softer this time. The snow lay like a quiet blessing over Greystone, not a burden. The old alleyways were cleaner. The shelter had doubled in size. And on the east side of town, where a trash-strewn lot once stood, a new sign had been planted in the ground. Veterans Honor Park, in memory, in service, in dignity. Clara and I sat on the bench nearest the memorial wall. It was the first thing they'd installed, a long, black granite surface etched with the names of local veterans, some living, many long gone. A small bronze plaque was mounted behind us. It read, "Dignity isn't earned by uniforms. It's preserved by how we treat those who wear them." Clara had chosen the words. I had simply nodded when she showed them to me. Now she leaned back, hands stuffed into her coat pockets, eyes scanning the peaceful scene, kids tossing snowballs, an elderly vet teaching a boy how to tie a flag knot, and neighbors greeting each other with more warmth than suspicion. "It's different now," she said quietly. I nodded. "Took a war on home soil to wake folks up. And a soldier they tried to forget," she added, glancing at me. I didn't answer, not out of modesty, but because I knew it wasn't just me. It was all of youth's very voice, every name, every moment someone chose kindness over comfort, truth over silence. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked after a moment. I shook my head. "Not anymore. I finally found my post." She smiled, then reached into her satchel and pulled out a thermos. "Coffee," she offered. "Only if it's strong." She poured us both a cup. We drank quietly, watching the breath rise from the mugs into the cold air. Around us, life moved gently, like it had learned something it never should have forgotten. For the first time in decades, I wasn't waiting for the next fight. I was just here. Present. The bench creaked slightly beneath our weight, but it held steady. So did we. So did the belief that built this place not in statues or ceremonies but in the simple truth that dignity is not a reward. It's a responsibility. And today, finally, we were keeping it.